Hi everyone and welcome to the latest episode of the Maritime CEO Leader Series powered by the Ocean Technologies Group. Today is a Seafarer special and we've got the founder of the Seafarer Happiness Index, which published its latest quarterly report this week with some quite somber reading, I would have to admit, which is unsurprising given the stress involved of operating a ship for such a prolonged period during a pandemic. For those that don't know, just tell us a little bit about how the index came to be and the scope, the reach of your survey.
Well, the Seafarer's Happiness Index, it all came about basically working with an organisation called KVH. They had a social network for seafarers called Crew 2. We were pulling together lots of content based on the life at sea as it is today, the various issues that were facing seafarers, and it became very obvious that the human angle, the hierarchy of needs, if you like, needed addressing from a seafaring perspective to actually kind of understand what was realistically going on at sea, how seafarers were really feeling, and the things that they were going through and experiencing. So we set about trying to come up with a hierarchy of needs for seafarers, and that came to kind of 10 key areas relating to issues such as connectivity, shore leave, workload, wages, food on board, exercise, interaction. So we developed 10 core kind of questions that basically then allowed us to go out to seafarers and keep asking them how they felt. Because, of course, the key to any relationship is dialogue. And it also felt that there maybe wasn't that ongoing dialogue between seafarers and the rest of the world, really, and in particularly the maritime industry. Eventually kind of moved on a little bit. We then found a home with the Mission to Seafarers, who really were keen on exactly that, the relationship element. I think the future, and we've probably seen through this COVID-19 crisis, is very much about how to kind of marry the demands of the physical relationship between the welfare of seafarers, the digital, the online, the connectivity issues. And so having a means of talking to seafarers, of hearing what they're going through and experiencing, I think has been quite a valuable tool. And over the past couple of years with the Mission to Seafarers, we seem to have gone from strength to strength in the reports, the areas that we look at and the interaction with seafarers. And just as importantly, and Splash 24/7 have been a huge supporter of this, is getting those stories out to the actual industry and engaging with them. So we seem to be in a good space, making progress. And really, it is about being able to tell the stories of seafarers. I get the data at the end of a quarter and I go in and kind of make my coffee, sit down. Now we need to understand what's going on. And some of the responses are very interesting indeed. Some of them are very robust. You have to be sitting down to read some of them. But what my kind of promise to myself and to those people who fill in the survey is, I will try to tell their story. I will try to weave that kind of narrative between what they're experiencing in a useful way that we can start to find answers.
Good. So let's just take a look at some of the words that were used in this 15-page Q1 report that was issued this week. It's quite somber reading. You've got words like dread, paranoia, work tsunami, burnout. So give us, our readers, a sense for what the changed mindset of seafarers are in the current very tricky climate.
It was quite interesting kind of going into the responses from seafarers early in the quarter, and we'd had an article in Splash about the stages of grief that were going on, and you could experience that through the eyes of the seafarers. Initially the kind of denial, and then the shock and the anger, and eventually this kind of acceptance. And it was a terrible acceptance of the fact that people weren't necessarily going to care about them, look out for them. And that's what we've kind of seen with the difficulties in crew changes, getting reliefs on board. And I think that has really kind of flavoured the response to this. Seafarers are obviously very attuned to the requirements of what it is to be on a ship, what the workload is, the things that they have to do. That's accelerated. There's a lot of emphasis on the activities on board to keep the vessel clean, to disinfect all the things that they were probably doing in the first instance, but this is being ramped up. So there is an emphasis on that. There's fear and concern about being on board on a ship, far from home, not maybe having the connectivity back at home, being scared and concerned about what's happening to their families. So all of these things kind of start to taint, if you like, the responses. The irony is that it's called a happiness index, but unfortunately, there's not always that much happiness. I think as well, one of the things that was really coming across probably most loudly in it was the fact that the uncertainty takes a terrible toll. The fact that many of the seafarers not sure when they'll be able to get home, not sure if a relief is coming, probably having been on board for quite a few months. And I think we were starting to see the interactions on board becoming slightly frayed around the edges. We get a lot of responses about the positives of the interactions on board, how people are friends with the people they work with, how there is still that camaraderie on board. But, in such a difficult time as this, you can sense just a little feeling that the stresses are really starting to tell. I haven't had a chance to go back in yet and start to get a sense of where that's coming. I think, in the next quarter, obviously, hopefully, things will be starting to be a bit more clear and remedies will be in place. But at the moment, things are tough. The workload ramping up, the interactions are difficult.
My next question, in fact, was sort of going to be that, which is, that was your Q1 report, but since then, in the 5 weeks since that survey has closed, have you kind of seen a further kind of darkening of the mood among those on board as travel restrictions remain in place?
Yeah, I tend not to go back in too much to the reports. I like to kind of, the reporting period to kind of find its own equilibrium, if you like, because I think sometimes you can kind of confirmation bias if you're looking for the problem and you kind of go in and see it too easily, perhaps. So I think what we are seeing is the things that we were talking about in quarter one haven't necessarily been fixed. The same problems are being spoken about. So the expectation would be that because there's no sign of the fixes, then the responses would be fairly similar, unfortunately. And that's why we all hope, and no one more than the poor seafarers themselves, that over this coming quarter, all of a sudden nations will be able to, even if they're not opening up fully, then they're understanding the fact that they have to allow seafarers crew changes, they have to allow the mechanisms that they all are happy to accept in having trade and having all the goods and all the good things that come with ships, that there's a responsibility there as well to look after the seafarers as well. So hopefully we will start to see some answers, which will then be reflected in the sentiment the seafarers are sharing with us.
As this series progresses, we're going to hopefully take it on board a number of ships around the world and kind of get some interviews with those who have been at sea for far longer than their original contract suggested. And we're going to be speaking as well with a lot of ship managers in the next 10 days or so. So watch out for that. Now, final question we ask everyone this. Your lockdown cultural questions. Best book to read, best TV binging at the moment?
Unfortunately, it seems to be ironic, lockdown, yay, we're all working from home and life's easier. I've never been busier. There seems to be, Teams is constantly buzzing and there's always another meeting to go to. So there hasn't been that much opportunity for culture, unfortunately. And I have also been finishing a reissue of Stowaways by Sea for the Nautical Institute coming soon. One of the things that I have been reading, and which has kind of often coloured some of the thinking around the seafarers, is a book called, and I don't know whether you'll be able to see that, it's called The Men of the Merchant Service. It was written in 1900, and there's a quote in it: "The astounding ignorance of maritime matters manifested by British people generally makes one gasp in amazement." And that was written in 1900. So, with the fuss about whether seafarers should be key workers and all the rest of it, it seems that this is a debate that's been kicking around for a long time. So hopefully the ship's horns sounding and all the rest of it, that some of the clapping will be for seafarers as well. When I have been able to get away from the maritime stuff, I've been watching far too many programs that involve middle-aged men digging holes on the Discovery Channel and looking for treasure, which I don't know is maybe says more about me than anything else. So I should probably stop watching The Curse of Oak Island. That might help me.
Oh, well, look, Stephen, keep up the great work, and I commend everyone to always check out your reports. They're really essential reading for anyone in shipping. And in the meantime, everyone stay well. See you next week. Stay sane and sanitized, everyone.